sometimes these cards surface where you really are reminded just how much you love your job. And this is a card that I think for many people is sort of a white whale. I think a lot of people, including myself, have kind of been relegated to assuming that nice centered examples simply don't exist, and that's not because we're being pessimistic. It's because you just have never seen them. Offered here is just it's a unicorn example that for us is special to say the least. I think PSA 8s of this all important George Mikan rookie I mean, they might come up every year or two. We've had a chance of brokering just a couple in our tenure. This particular 8 is better than any copy we've ever seen. I think it's easy to say it may very well be the best 8 in the entire market. The centering and the print are truly incredible, and those are two things that frankly you just don't ever see combined. And then the fact that the card is so well preserved, it's a very reputable card condition too for the greatest sign. So yeah, this is just a really fun card. It might be the most exciting vintage basketball card that we've had a chance of brokering in recent times. Not necessarily because it's the most expensive, although there's probably something to be said about that too. But just because it's so infrequently seen, and yet this card is so important. George Mikan, for those who aren't as up to speed on it, I mean, he's largely regarded as like the game's first big man. This is just the preeminent rookie card from the beginning of basketball in a lot of ways. Basketball at this time was a couple decades old, but it really was brought into the modern era by guys like George Mikan. And especially because of the rarity of basketball productions, there just aren't that many cards to choose from. There wouldn't be another mainstream basketball issue issued until 1957 with the Topps inaugural issue. So yeah, this is just a really important card to the market. I think it's on most people's top 10 or 25 card list if you're trying to address all sports. It's just an incomparably desired and critical card. Front and back, it's just a clean. Everything's where it should be. This is a recipient of our exceptional designation on the eye appeal, which for us is saying we think it's in the top 15%. That's conservative, perhaps. I don't necessarily think that there are better 8s out there. I would say it very easily could have gotten an S. For the top 5%. It has a little bit of corner wear, which will show, but for us, when we sticker something as S, it's basically saying that we think the eye appeal is better than the grade assigned. And in this case, we do think it's graded right. I don't think that the card should have graded an 8.5 or a 9. It's just as nice as an 8 could ever possibly look. Going in on the details, first and foremost, the print and the coloring is just awesome. You'll get wear streaks and blemishes in the background, print dots, all of these things kind of surface with some frequency on this issue. This one's just as boldly printed as you'll ever see. Corners are all square. A couple show slightly more wear than the others, but overall it's just very clean, fresh. This bottom right is probably the weakest of the four. Still, comes to a square point, but it has a little bit more wear. The back is clean. There's no wax or other issues. The corners on the back are very similar to the front. We show just very few signs of circulation overall. I think the last thing I want to comment on is value. I think the market on this card is woefully suppressed. I think given the importance, you compare this card's value versus, or I guess a desire versus demand, it's the supply just isn't there. I don't know how better to describe it, but this card is so rare, and yet given its importance, it's hard to understand why the price points are in this $20,000 to $30,000 range. It seems much more appropriate to be looking at this card and multiples of that. You just can't replace it. So I think that in the grand scheme of things, as the trading card market matures, this is one of those cards that it's a museum caliber card. and how it's not worth dramatically more than what the market history suggests is kind of hard to describe. So I think the investment potential for this card is off the charts. It's just, again, this is the kind of card that makes you love your job, and we could not be more excited to be featuring it here in Auction 5.